Though the rivalry between France and Britain was fierce, it was little more than posturing, a Cold War. Conditions in the United States, on the other hand, were grim. The country was divided in a bitter and bloody civil war that set the North against the South. It was a war that would become known as the First Modern War, a war in which technology would play a key role. Central to that role was control of the railroads and control of the rivers. John Ericsson, much to his amazement, was once more in demand. Ericsson had been called in by the Union Navy in response to a threat. They knew that the Confederates had started a building program for ironclads. They had started using them on the western rivers, and now there was a threat to the eastern seaboard.
The United States Navy created a board of 3 officers to look into the possibility of building armored ships and to recommend contracts.
The Union government had heard through a spy that one of their frigates, USS Merrimac, burned and abandoned by them in their hurried retreat from the Norfolk Navy Yard in '61, had been resurrected by the Confederates and rebuilt as the ironclad CSS Virginia. They desperately needed a response.
They really didn't know enough about armored ships to know in which direction to go. And the United States Navy was kind of like accepting anything that might help them. It's kind of like a shotgun firing in all directions, hoping that something was going to hit.
Ericsson's proposal was revolutionary. A steam-driven battery built of iron floated so low in the water that her living accommodation would be submerged. A revolving metal turret and a small conning tower were all that would protrude above the waterline. And in the turret there would be just 2 11-inch cannon. The board had seen nothing like it in their lives.
The ironclad board is anything enamored since their old mossbacks with Ericsson. Ericsson is no more enamored with the Navy, dating back to the problems on Princeton.
Lincoln himself evidently became involved, read about it, was impressed with it. The only ones who were not overwhelmingly impressed were the 3 officers, because it was such a unique revolutionary warship. It was kind of like a raft on a box with a turret on top. And they didn't think it would float. They didn't think that it would be worth constructing.
But they built it, and barely in time. The Northern Fleet was already in peril. Patrolling the line that divided north from south, they were lying at anchor off Newport News and Hampton Roads. With no sign of the enemy, they were off their guard. Nonetheless, they were a large fleet and not a force to be engaged lightly. On the afternoon of the 8th of March, 1862, the ironclad Virginia crossed Chesapeake Bay.
Out comes Virginia, the ironclad monster, moving slowly toward these handsome ships of wood and men of iron. She engages first Cumberland. Takes her over an hour to make a turn and come back, and drives her beak into the bowels of Cumberland. And Cumberland goes to the bottom. Several hundred sailors dead. She now engages Congress.
All the shells from the Congress bounced off of the slanted hull of the Virginia.
Congress goes aground. They try hot shot. and soon she is a mass of flame.
As darkness drew in, the tide lowered, and the Virginia withdrew to return in the morning. Word of the Virginia's success reached President Lincoln. He was dismayed. But Ericsson's little craft had arrived under the cover of darkness and had taken up her position.
The next morning, on the 9th day of March, when for the first time in naval history, 2 ironclads engaged. Monitor takes a position between Virginia and Minnesota. And the engagement that changes naval warfare takes place. Fortunately for the Confederates, because of Princeton, they're using reduced charges. Virginia tries all ways, but she doesn't have enough speed, so when she runs into Monitor, she just nudges her. After about 4 hours, Virginia lumbers away. Monitor takes her position like the watchdog, covering Minnesota. And Virginia returns to Gosport Navy Yard.
Tactically, it was a Union victory because the Monitor was to defend the Minnesota, and the Minnesota was still there when it was all over. Strategically, it was a draw. Nonetheless, the United States Navy would concentrate on building Monitor-type vessels, many of his design, for the remainder of the war and even afterwards. And so John Ericsson was something of a hero as far as the Navy was concerned and as far as the general public was concerned.
Ericsson's vision caused a major change in coastal defense. Eventually, it would lead to nothing less than the rebuilding of the world's navies.
From that time on, no one, to my knowledge, believed that our armored ships, iron ships, armored ships, would not gradually simply take over all navies. Wooden ships were obsolete, and naval officers knew it.
Warship was made possible by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to enhance public understanding of the role of technology. The foundation also seeks to portray the lives of the men and women engaged in scientific and technological pursuit.